What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Landing on the Plains, all things Auburn football from someone who really lived it. Welcome back. I'm your host, former linebacker, team captain, and NFL vet, Chandler Wooten. And today we've got another good one for you today because first things first, your Auburn Tigers officially in the top 10 in the recruiting rankings after picking up yet another big time commitment. We take a look at the roster and give our outlook both offensively and defensively. And I also give an update on my top three favorite recruits and commitments that we've landed thus far. So we're really getting into all of that, and we'll go through, each commitment as I see fit and kind of just talk about them and break them down. So let's get into it. Over the weekend, Auburn landed another commitment, this time from four-star defensive lineman Nate Campbell from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I currently reside. So shout out to the home team. Um, Yet another example of this staff identifying a player that, not necessarily in their stomping grounds, out of Charlotte, North Carolina, but identifying the guy that they like and going to get that guy. I've been talking about it. I've been harping on it for a while now that, I think right now we've only got maybe close to like 10% of our commitments, from the state of Alabama. And so right now, this staff is really just knocking this thing out of the park. And, like I said, identifying guys that they really like and just going to get them. And so if you haven't really been paying too much of a close of attention, I think the vision of what this staff wants to build is very clear. And I think they've done a great job of doing it. I think they're obviously addressing the offensive and defensive lines, big time commitments from guys like Leighton Von Brandt, answering questions about a position of need that, they've had trouble with for quite a while, for years now. You add another interior offensive line guy like Reed Ramsey, who's going to be a big part of the future plans as well. Other guys, on the defensive line, once we start going to the other side of the ball, like Donovan Moore, obviously just picked up Nate Comba, another guy on the edge like Rion Jackson. So, I mean, this staff is doing a really, really good job of attacking the trenches. And that's something that Auburn fans have been, really wanting for a while, especially offensively, because, defensively, we've always had really good defensive linemen. And so I think them coming in, establishing what they want early and going to get it, really speaks volumes. And so just staying on the topic of this top 10 recruiting class, which isn't done, by the way, I'm really going to just now get into my top three additions of this class thus far and why. And I think first and foremost, I got to start with Chance Gilbert. And I think just because this guy is a really, really fun prospect. And so it's just he jumps off the film as soon as you cut it on, and it's kind of unbelievable. I saw one clip, I believe it was maybe the second clip after I turned the film on completely, and like just the way he broke on the football, intercepted the pass, jumped in front of the receiver, like the way he moves, his movement is very efficient. Like you can tell he has that it factor. And then it's like all the interceptions he was getting on the tape, and he's just kind of special with the ball in his hands. And so right off the bat, I was like, damn. I'm looking at these receptions, how he's, returning these balls and stuff like that. And I'm like, obviously that's return ability. Like he has returner ability. And then next thing you know, you start seeing all these clips of him returning kicks and kickoffs and things like that. I'm like, yo, yeah, so he's special. And then, you keep watching the film and now he's playing offense and he's a damn good receiver too. So, obviously you're dealing with a really good athlete, somebody who was highly talented coming out, and a guy we really got to, do everything we got to do to retain him because, we were in quite a good battle with Georgia for him and obviously beat him out. And so, a big time recruiting win for this staff. Like I said, this kid is going to be really, really good in the secondary. And so, like I said, he also has return ability. I wonder if he can, continue to develop into maybe like an elite punt returner as well. Just because like once you start talking about those kind of things, like expecting the game that way, now you're talking about different kind of territory as far as like being special as a player. And so I think he has the tools. Like I said, he jumps off the film, and so I think us, recently getting him is extremely big time for us. And so we've got to, like I said, continue to do everything we got to do to keep him in the fold. And so I think he would be my number one pick for, uh, commitments that I'm most excited about. Moving on to number two, I think is a guy that might surprise some people, but it's my position, and it might not be the one that people might think. Obviously, I really think Isaac McNeil is a really, really good player. He's gonna be phenomenal at Auburn. The way I feel like DJ Durkin can use somebody like him, he's gonna come in and make an maybe even an immediate impact, just the kind of tools he possesses. However, I'm really, really high on Kareem Palmer, and I'm really more so excited just because I know DJ Durkin knows his linebackers, right? And so for him to go out, identify a kid with this kind of ability, speed, I know he has a vision for a guy like this. And so that's kind of what I'm excited about too, just because when I can see the film, I can see how he can fit into a system like ours. And another thing that really got me excited is because he reminds me of one of my former teammates and Jacoby McLean. And I'm gonna tell you why. Just because they're both undersized, and when they were both in high school, they wore the same number. I played against Jacoby when we were in high school, and so I remember Jacoby when he was in high school. I think Kareem Palmer is a little taller, more so like 6'1", maybe pushing even 6'2", as Jacoby was a little shorter, but they have similar games in the fact that even down to the stance that they get in is very similar. And just like the kind of pop that he plays with, I think Jacoby was a tad bit more physical, especially at this age. But this kid, Kareem Palmer, will hit you as well. Like, that's not to say this kid is soft. Like, he will hit you. And the way he takes on linemen, like the way he shoots through gaps, like it's very Jacoby-esque. And like the way he'll never give up on plays. He's running down plays. Like, he's a high effort guy. Like I said, undersized, but damn, like the speed, the pop, those kind of attributes, they jump off the film just like Jacoby. And so, like, I'm seeing the resemblance. And so I think he has the frame to come into college and obviously get bigger. Like I said, 6'1", maybe pushing 6'2". He has the frame to easily be 230 and still be explosive. So this is the kind of guy that, who I think is extremely underrated, in my personal opinion. I think, I'm not some kind of guru or expert. Well, I mean, damn, I am technically a linebacker expert. I played the position at the highest level, and I've seen, what it looks like, and I know a really, really good linebacker play. I do, and like I love watching linebackers. I love studying linebackers. Like that's what I do. And so when I watch him, I can see that he has it. Like it's something that you really can't explain, but the kid has it. And so I think him, along with the addition of, like I said, Isaac McNeil, this linebacker group, and in this class alone is going to be crazy for years to come. And so continuing to stack these classes on top of classes, and we can create a freaking linebacker factory. You know what I mean? So starting with the guys that we've got, on the roster right now. So and that's just continuing on what's been going on for the last 5 to 7 years as well. So like I said, Kareem Palmer being my second choice as far as commitments that I'm excited about. Moving on, last but not least, we've got number 3, Leighton Von Brandt, offensive tackle. And I think this one right here is pretty self-explanatory just because this one right here is a very, very big position of need for us. This is a position that we have not recruited extremely well over the last probably decade or so at this point, and maybe even further back than that. And so I think he's a very, very, very good player, and he's going to come in and have the opportunity to compete. He's going to have the opportunity to come in and compete, depending on, whether the staff continues to bring in, transfers or things like that. Everything is so always evolving. However, you're talking about a guy who's, top 5 at his position or so coming out of high school, a guy who is massive and has room to grow. He's going to be a really, really good player. And so this is the type of guy who could, help anchor your offensive line for multiple years, 2 to 3 years. And, you're set at tackle. And so it's been a while since we've had that. And another thing that I really like about this kid as well is he is, vocal as well. Like he is actively online recruiting, still visiting and things like that. And so he's a guy who's, trying to get other elite prospects on board with him. And so that's another thing that I really like about him. He's all in, committed. And so it's kind of hard and rare to find, guys like that these days. And so those are my, top three commitments as far as this class thus far. Things are subject to change, but I would probably go with those three right now. And that's not to say, I'm not really high on other players as well, because I really am on other guys as well, like I said. But those would probably be my top three as far as commitments that we've had thus far. And the most important piece of this entire thing, which we cannot forget, is that it's only June. You know, we still have to retain all of these guys. We still have to, continue to recruit them. Just because we have their commitment does not mean the job is done. And so we still have to retain these guys. Obviously, the news recently of, one of our running back commits maybe being on flip watch. And so that's the nature of college football. Like, it is what it is. And I would be shocked if everybody that we had right now, stayed in the class once it was time to sign later down the line. That's just how it goes. And you see that from every single program, every single team. So first and foremost, I wouldn't say, it's time to panic if anybody did flip, because we're going to flip somebody else too, probably. Like, that's just how it goes. And so, like I said, it's always great to be in this position, but it's only June, and, still more work to be done. Which brings me to this current team that we have right now, because these commitments are, important, and they'll come in and play with a lot of these guys, that we have on the team right now, and right now they're building that solid foundation. And so, which brings me to this current team. Obviously, these commits will come in and play with a lot of these guys that we have on the roster right now. This is how, you continue to build that solid foundation. And so, speaking of this current team, here is where I think we have the most questions headed into the season. And I think it coincides with how we've been recruiting, and I think it's been phenomenal thus far. I think this staff thus far gets an A+ as far as recruiting goes. Like, there's really no other way to put it. Like, from where we were, you know, when the staff took over, and not even just when they took over, really, 2 months ago, we were dead last in the SEC. And so to see where we are sitting at this moment, A+. And so I think the momentum is building, and we've got to continue to sustain it. And I think that's an important part. And so, speaking of, like I said, this current team and what I think this staff has been emphasizing recruiting wise, and when you think about what they've been emphasizing and you look at down the list of the commitments, and like, it just jumps off the page of, and it's really like eye popping. Like, yeah, this is exactly what we need, and they've gone out to do that. Like, when you look at additions, like I said, of Leighton Von Brandt, offensive tackle, and then you look at the additions of the interior offensive line guys, and you look at the defensive line and getting guys on the edge like Rion Jackson and other guys in this class, it's obviously been a point of emphasis. Like, hey, we need to rebuild from the ground up, build these trenches up, because that's how we win in the SEC. And so I think, like I said, they get an A+. And so another thing I think is important, like, headed into the season, defensively, like I said, they've got some edge guys. I think they're still trying to go after some edge guys, because, like, we just got off of losing Falk and Crawford, and we're gonna have some question marks, especially headed into the season. As far as pass rush, like, where's that pass rush gonna come from, especially consistently? And so you have a linebacker and Xavier Atkins, who obviously can rush the passer, coming off a season of having 9 sacks, which for a off the ball linebacker is incredible, incredible. But in the same breath, you can't rely on that all the time, especially coming off a season of having 9 sacks. Like, coming into this season, like, that's going to be a point of emphasis for teams. Like, we cannot let 17 wreck our game. So that's a different dynamic that we have to also address as well. So can we, rush the passer with 4? Can we find that guy to consistently win one-on-one? And we have some guys. We've got some guys, but I think that's one of the questions, especially going into the season, that we have to answer. And then it'll be, one of those things that remains to be seen. Like, you have to actually go out and do it. And so you look at Jared Smith, you look at Deshaun Womack, who came in from Ole Miss, you look at getting a guy like Chris Murray back. I think that's probably one of our main questions on defense, as far as, like, Where is this thing going? Because the talent is there. The talent is there. But defensively, can we generate a consistent pass rush? Who's going to be that go-to guy? I think there's some other small questions defensively, like corner, things like that. How to juggle all of that talent back. Like the talent is there. It's about finding the right guys, the right pieces, to play the right roles, which is on the staff ultimately. But I think they'll figure that part out. And then offensively, I think it's just like, I mean, it's really no other way to get around it. It's more so about the offensive line, because I think we have talented receivers, we have talented playmakers. I don't think we have like a all American, but I don't think we necessarily need one with the system that we have, the type of offense we're gonna run. Like we have really really good receivers. Like you don't have to have an all American to have a damn good offense. But I think we've got a damn good running back and a damn good room. Matter of fact, and so when you look at the quarterback skill set and things like that, like the pieces are there. I think it's just going to come down to how the offensive line gels. Like, can they come together? Can they gel the right way? Can they get on one accord? Can they get their communication right? Can they get their checks right? Can they communicate on the road when it's loud? You know, how do they react when they see a look they haven't prepared for or practice? Do they panic or do they communicate? It's just small things that make an offensive line great. And then ultimately, can you run the football and protect the quarterback, which we've struggled with? So I think for us, it's really about like that. We have talent littered all around the roster. It's going to come down to, what I've been talking about, what a lot of fans have been talking about for a while. You know, can we gel offensively on the offensive line, and protect the quarterback, run the football, and then just defensively, can we generate a pass rush after losing two guys to the draft? The talent's there. It's just about, guys stepping into that role. And so I think those are probably the two, biggest question marks as far as offensively and defensively headed into fall camp. Right now the guys obviously continuing to work hard throughout this summer, get bigger, faster, stronger, and then we'll continue to cross those bridges when we get there. But right now, this staff continues to remain on fire on a recruiting trail. Don't see them slowing down anytime soon. Well, honestly, I take that back. They will slow down. Not necessarily just because uh, they're losing out on recruits, but I just don't know how much bigger the recruiting class will be. We're sitting at 18 right now. I suspect we'll have a handful of a few more, but as far as like the efficiency, yeah, knocking it out the park. And so, if things do slow down, it's just because I mean, I don't think anybody knows the exact number that they're taking. But the guys that they want, the guys that they're trying to go out and get, for the most part, they're going to get them, and they're still in contention for a few more. And so, just a little foreshadowing. Thursday, we'll be getting into a little more detail as far as like position groups. We'll go group by group and rank them as far as how I see them on this football team, and position group by position group, and get into a little further detail. But that's all we got for today, folks. If you like this episode, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and as always, War Eagle.